What's going on, everybody? It's your boy Toxie Boyo, and the time is upon us. One of my 5 most anticipated games of 2026, being Resident Evil Requiem, has finally released. It's available, and I've been playing it all weekend. I just finished it last night. I was going to record my review of it last night, but I had some other stuff going on. Just got home from work. It's still pretty fresh in my mind, so we're going to talk about it. And if you're at all curious as to what my other 4 most anticipated games of 2026 are, I guess I could tell you. It's going to be GTA 6, assuming that that game does come out this year, Phantom Blade Zero, which I've been waiting for years, Marvel's Wolverine, which, again, been some years, and From Software's The Dusk Bloods. That's probably the only thing that'll motivate me to get a Switch too, but none of that is what we're here to talk about. We're here to talk about Resident Evil 9. Now, I probably called this video, like, Resident Evil 9, the best Resident Evil game in the last 10 years or something like that. And the short answer to that question is yes. The long answer to that question is yes, but let me spend the next 20 minutes explaining why. The first thing that I want to address is that this game is for Resident Evil fans. Now, that sounds really obvious considering that this is the 9th game, but it comes after the franchise has been reinvented a couple different times over the last few years. You know, we got the remakes of Resident Evils 2, 3, and 4, which the Resident Evil 2 remake kind of like turned the game into RE4. It did take out some original content from that first game, but like it still served as a reinvention of the franchise, especially coming right after Resident Evil 7, which was another reinvention of the franchise. And so, like, those two types of games existed at the same time. So, what I mean to say is that if you're a fan of, like, the early days of resource management and intimate, interconnected map design and that true survival horror feeling, that's here. If you like that feeling of isolation and confusion and dread that you get from like Resident Evil 7 and the first half of 8, that's here. And if you love the high-flying, 120 BPM action movie type of gameplay from Resident Evils 4, 5, and 6, that's here. And that's what I really appreciate about this game, is that it doesn't pick and choose which era of Resident Evil it wants to acknowledge. It doesn't, disown certain games because they're less popular. It celebrates it all. It's a proper celebration of Resident Evil, and I don't envy the devs at Team RE over at Capcom. I can't imagine what it's like to try to make a Resident Evil game right now when you have games like Resident Evil 4 Remake that sell 10 million copies plus, and you have a game like Resident Evil Village which sells 10 million copies plus. These very different games with some connective tissue. Yeah, they've both got merchants, whatever, but like, or you can compare it to 7. 7 is very different from 8. So you have a game like Resident Evil 7 and a game like Resident Evil 4 Remake, which are equally successful and equally popular. So clearly, these two different flavors of Resident Evil are equally important. So you have to either pick and choose which, identity of the franchise you want to continue forward with, or you find a way to do both. And people, myself included, have also been clamoring for the old characters to come back, especially Leon. Well, you can't really make a horror game about Leon because he's not scared of anything. So what do? You give us a new character, like Ethan Winters, who's, dead now, but you give us a new character like Ethan, who is in way over her head. She's completely out of her element. She doesn't know what's going on. She's terrified. That's how you create the horror experience. And I think it was the right call, and I think Grace Ashcroft is a great character. Now, that's a particularly bold decision for 2 reasons. One, a new protagonist in the 9th game is a big gamble. A huge gamble, especially while you're kind of still ignoring certain long-standing characters from the franchise. Like, yeah, Death Island exists, but people aren't really watching stuff like that most of the time. So, as far as the games are concerned, we haven't seen Jill Valentine in almost, 15 years? We haven't seen Claire Redfield in... when did Revelations come out? Was that Claire? We haven't seen these, pillars of the franchise in over a decade, right? Rebecca, perish the thought. She'll maybe never show up again. It's also bold because you're taking a character from a spin-off game that people didn't really play that much, RE Outbreak. I've never played it. You've probably never played it. And you're going to say that the character from that game has a daughter, and that daughter is one of the protagonists of the new mainline game. This is a numbered game. This is the one that people are going to be playing. So it's bold. But again, I think it works out. I don't feel like it's set up in such a way that you necessarily have to have played Outbreak in order to be rewarded as an RE fan here. There's plenty. There's plenty for long-standing fans, trust me. Now, I'm someone that really liked Resident Evil 8. I sang that game's praises like no other when I did my review of that game, but I did still have some criticisms, and one of them was that like the game kind of just stops being a horror game at a certain point. There's always a moment in a Resident Evil game where it stops being scary, but it's not, I don't think it's because it's trying not to be scary anymore. It's just, there's a point where you become too OP for the scenario that you're in. This, in the case of Resident Evil 8, it wasn't really about that. It was just about the fact that, like, I don't know, they tried to turn Ethan Winters into an action hero, and I think it was a little too abrupt. He's not a Chris Redfield, Leon Kennedy type of character, and one game isn't really enough to develop him into that. I know that, like, he's motivated by trying to save his daughter, and that's cool. He just doesn't work as a badass character in my mind. You know, I mean, I don't know. Another problem that I had is that, like, I feel like there were too many moving pieces. There's too many different environments, and too many different locations for any one of them to really feel that iconic or that, you know, memorable. I think if I booted up Resident Evil 2 Remake right now, I would still know my way around the police station, and I haven't really played that game in like 3 or 4 years. I played Resident Evil 8 again a couple months ago, and after the dollhouse, I probably don't know my way around the game. That's just kind of how it is. So those were some concerns that I had going into RE9, especially because it's like, okay, well, we're bringing Leon back, and we've got this new character. And so, like, you can do first person with Grace and third person with Leon, or third person with both, or first person with both, it doesn't matter. But, like, the game is designed to be first person with Grace, third person with Leon, to distinctify the survival horror game from the horror action game. And I thought that that might feel a little jarring, but I think it's actually done beautifully well. I was also kind of concerned that going back to Raccoon City, going back to RPD, bringing Leon back, that might just feel kind of fan service-y and nostalgia bait. And sure, but I do feel like it serves a purpose, but I'm also not going to complain about it because of the fact that I've been asking for this. I've been asking to go back to zombies. I've been asking for Leon to come back. You know, I'm not going to start complaining about it, even if it does come with some stuff that I don't particularly like. I guess I'll talk about some of the negatives here for a little bit, because I do have very little to say negative, and I'm going to be glazing this game for the next however long this video is. One, I guess the Porsche product placement was kind of weird. I've seen people complaining about that. I wasn't really particularly bothered by it. I don't care what kind of car Leon Kennedy is driving. I will say, as much as I am impressed by, and consistently impressed by, the RE engine, we've been doing this for about 10 years. Like, every major Capcom game from the last 10 years has been in the RE engine. Street Fighter's in it, Devil May Cry is in it, Monster Hunter is in it, and we've done, like, what, 6 Resident Evil games in it? It looks good. It does, but it has limitations. One of those limitations is hair. You know, a lot of times when hair gets less clean and it's more curly or more frazzled, it kind of looks like straw. Like, I don't think that the hair looks very good, and I also think that it has a tendency to have characters shimmer and glisten a bit more than they're supposed to in certain situations. And there's a part where an enemy has like a melting animation when you defeat it, and I thought that looked really bad. That's the only thing in this game that I thought looked actually bad, was that particular animation. I'm not saying that it's time to get rid of the RE engine, but we're seeing its limitations now, and I would like to think that Capcom is considering a new engine for RE10. You can, like, Pragmata's still coming out in it. If you're going to do a Devil May Cry remake, you can put that in the engine. That's fine. Onimusha, Okami, probably in the RE engine. But when it comes time to do Resident Evil 10, I would like to see a new engine. And then beyond that, this is spoilers, I guess, for the story, and it's gonna sound hypocritical based on what I just said about the nostalgia stuff from earlier. I kind of don't love that it feels like Resident Evil can't get out of Oswald Spencer's shadow and Umbrella's shadow, you know, like, I really, like, yes, I was, you know, asking for the original characters to come back, but it wasn't so that they could deal with more Umbrella. I actually really liked Chris dealing with Miranda. I don't love Chris in Resident Evil 8. I think his characterization has problems. And I miss Roger Craig Smith. But I liked him dealing with Miranda. And a lot of people were probably, like, pleasantly surprised to find out that, like, Miranda and Spencer knew each other. And that, like, it was all connected once you saw that Umbrella logo in the village. Whatever. I didn't love that. And even here in this game, when you find out you're going back to Raccoon City, you pretty much expect Spencer and Umbrella to come back up, and it's kind of like, I don't know, 30 years we're still doing this. But if I look at this as like the 30th anniversary of Resident Evil, and like this is a celebration of the entire franchise, it bothers me less. So results may vary when it comes to that. You might not have a problem with it, you might be frustrated by it. That's going to completely depend on you and how you feel about stuff like that in the first place. Are you cynical towards nostalgia bait? Stuff like that is going to influence your opinion on that particular aspect. Pardon the interruption, it's your boy Toxic Boyo, and I wanted to take a brief moment to let you know about the Toxic Touch Productions Patreon. I'm not currently monetized on YouTube, but I still want to bring you the best content that I possibly can. I want to make those videos that you love, and I want them to be the best that they can be. But I need a little help. That's where you guys come in. If you want to support me directly, you can head on over to patreon.com/ToxicTouchProductions or click the link in the description or the pinned comment. For even just $5 a month, you can get your name included in the credits at the end of the video, gain access to exclusive channels on the Discord, and you get specialized merch at no extra cost. It only gets better as the tiers go higher. Go check it out. Thanks for listening and thanks for supporting my dreams. Now let's get back to the video. I guess I'll also say, mild spoilers, there's a point in the story where you have to make a choice. That's not really something that's synonymous with Resident Evil. And there's a lot of games that will make you make a choice. And it's not always, or how should I say, sometimes it's very clear what they want you to do, and you'll know what they want you to do based on how much effort they put into each, like, pathway from that choice. And that's the case here. One choice gives you, you know, an extra 30 minutes. The other choice gives you 5. You know, so it's like, oh man, I wonder which scenario was the one they wanted me to go with. I just feel like if you make it a bit more nebulous, you have better results there. Now to sing this game's praises. First of all, the performances. I legitimately think that Grace Ashcroft is the best performed character in the history of Resident Evil. I know that Resident Evil has a rocky relationship with voice acting, but legitimately, Grace Ashcroft I don't know the woman that plays her, but she gives such a good performance. It's so immersive and it feels so real. I feel like she completely perfectly captures the feeling of being a random person in this situation where you don't know what to do and you are scared for your life. By that same token, Leon Kennedy is fantastic here too. The characterization, the performance. Now, to state the obvious, it's the same voice actor and face model that portrayed Leon in the last two, in the remakes of Resident Evils 2 and 4. There's flashbacks to Resident Evil 2 because you're in, you know, RPD. There's flashbacks, and so those flashbacks, for the sake of continuity and immersion, I assume, are from Resident Evil 2 Remake. I think that also serves the purpose of saying that the remake timeline of the games is taking the place of the original canon. I don't know if that's true or if I'm reading too much into it, but it feels like they're trying to communicate that the events that take place in the remakes are just the official version of events now. And I think that works because Leon's a little different in RE2 Remake than he is in the original. For instance, the reason he gets to Raccoon City late in the original is because he's hungover from a party. Resident Evil 2 Remake Leon doesn't even seem like he drinks. You know what I mean? Like, they kind of made him more straight-laced, more goody-two-shoes. And I think that's maybe to serve to make the contrast between him in 2 and 4 more drastic. But still, he's a little different in the 4 remake than he is in the original 4 as well. He's not as much of a smartass. He's taking the situation a little bit more seriously. And so when you see him here in Resident Evil 9, the character progression feels a lot more linear if you look at the remakes rather than the originals. If you look at 2, 4 from 98 and 2005, I don't know if it works quite as well. I'd have to play those games again. But it's why I feel like going back to Raccoon City and going back to the police station, I feel like it works here because of the way that Leon is characterized. Speaking of that, though, I mentioned that if you love the action era of Resident Evil, then you're going to have a lot to love here. I mean, there's currency again. You know, there's upgrades to, like, your armor, to your weapons, all sorts of good stuff. Like, there's a lot of those elements in Resident Evil 8 as well, sure. But, like, here it's directly tied to your performance. That feels great. You know, Leon's got these sick animations. He's got these takedowns. He's got the parry system is back. Now, I will say that the parry system feels a little less consistent than it does in the RE4 remake. Also, minor gripe, I wish that he still had Major Krauser's knife. There's a moment where you get a new melee weapon, and I think it's supposed to be evocative of when you fought Krauser and got his knife. But in the Resident Evil 4 remake, he still has the knife that Lieutenant Branagh gave him in the 2 make. I wish that in Resi 9, he still had Krauser's knife. I know it's 20 years later, but I would appreciate it if he still had Krauser's knife. Not a big deal whatsoever. Does not make the game any less good. I want to talk about Grace for a second, too, because you might have forgotten what a good, scary Resident Evil game felt like, because we haven't really had one since 7. The other ones do turn action at a certain point, and 7 does that too, but it's less drastic in my opinion. Grace's campaign never does that. Also, I will address the elephant in the room. I read a tweet that said that there were going to be 2 campaigns in this game, and that they were going to be like 10 hours each. I should have known that wasn't true. This game took me about 9 hours to beat. Standard Resident Evil length. I got stuck a couple times. I got lost. That's not the game's fault. That's my fault. I thought it was going to be like a Grace A, Leon B type thing, or like a Resident Evil 6 type thing where you do Grace's whole campaign and then you do Leon's whole campaign. It kind of sort of works like that, but they alternate at what I do feel like is a good rate. Assuming that you've played the game at least a little bit by now, you may feel as though the Leon sections are really short in comparison to how Grace to like how long you play as Grace, but then that sort of idea is then flipped once you start playing as Leon proper. So I think it works out to be about a 50-50 split, all things considered. But like the lighting, the sound design in Resident Evil is so good now. You can tell how far away the creatures are by listening to their footsteps. That's awesome. You know how to get around these bigger, more difficult enemies that are like kind of stalking the hallways looking for you. That aspect is back. If you liked Mr. X, if you liked Jack Baker, that's back. Lady D in 8, you know, like that sort of mechanic of there being this monster in the halls. Now, they're not indestructible like you're probably used to, because I did give you 3 examples of characters that you can't kill until the game says you can. It works differently here. The crafting system has also been reworked. You feel a little bit more powerful than Ethan does at the beginning of like Resident Evil 7 or 8, but it's still about your creativity and how you want to play the game. I think it's perfectly creepy, perfectly scary. There's a new monstrous enemy that is recurring in this game, and I think that this particular enemy puts Mr. X and Nemesis and Lady D to shame. I think it's probably some of the best Resident Evil enemy design ever, and I love it. I think it's gonna go down as an icon in the horror game genre. Speaking of horror games, now one of the things that we love so much about Resident Evil 7 is that it learned from other games in the industry. It learned from Silent Hills. It learned from Outlast. Resident Evil 9 is also borrowing from other games. It's learning from its contemporaries. There's elements of like Alien Isolation in this game, Silent Hill 2. Like, I love when iron sharpens iron. I love when something great takes inspiration from something else that's great, and you can see it and you can identify it. It feels like it rewards you for loving horror games, and I'm always going to be a fan of something like that. And another thing I want to highlight, I think that the police station in Resident Evil 2, the remake particularly, is one of the most well-designed horror game maps of all time. I love the way that everything circles back in on itself. I love that the longer you spend in it, the more you just have it memorized. You don't need to pull up the map as much. You know where you are, you know where you're going, you know what connects to what. I was worried that we wouldn't have that again for a while, but I'm happy to report that the care center in Resident Evil 9 is just as good, if not, dare I say, better. I love that each wing of the facility is distinct. I love that, I don't know, you just have such a sense of awareness and presence when you're in that care center. You know where you are. You know, you're only there for maybe 2 hours, right? Depending on how long it takes you to figure stuff out. Another thing, I think that they were listening to some criticisms from Resident Evil 8. One, you can pretty much survive any encounter by playing Ring Around the Rosie with whoever's chasing you. And two, the puzzles were not very good in Resident Evil 8. It was kind of just like, hey, you need a thing to get through this door. Or rather, it was like, it gives you an item, and then 5 minutes later you encounter a door that can only be opened with an... If you inspect the item that you just got, you get a thing from it, you put it in the door, boom, you can go forward now. It's much more hand-holdy in a way that I don't like. Resident Evil 9 completely does away with that. You'll find an item on the 3rd floor of the West Wing that you use in the basement of the East Wing. You know what I mean? It makes you remember it makes you learn the entire map. It's like, oh, you know what? 45 minutes ago, I saw a door that I couldn't get through because I needed a tool. Is this the tool that does that? So you go back and it's like, hey, or maybe it's not the tool. And it's like, okay, so that means that there's somewhere around here that I haven't been yet. There's something that I need. I don't know. I felt so intrinsically encouraged to explore and to look around and to try not to miss anything. Obviously, I'm going to miss things. I'm not perfect. I don't think I've ever found everything on my first playthrough of a Resident Evil game. It just happens. Another thing that I did want to mention that I should have put in the negatives portion of the video, the main villain of this game, Victor Gideon, not really a spoiler because you hear his name like 20 minutes in. He just does not have the presence that Resident Evil villains need these days. Like, we're coming off of characters like Wesker and Krauser, and even like Salazar. But like, looking back at Resident Evil 8, Heisenberg and Lady D are a tough act to follow. They really are. Even Mother Miranda, I think, has more presence in that game than Gideon has in this one. It's not to say he doesn't have screen time, because he does. You encounter him quite a few times. But I don't know, I think the game tries to be so nebulous as to what his motivations are and to what he's trying to accomplish. They leave him shrouded in mystery for so long that by the time you actually get answers, it's not to the questions that you really wanted the answers to, and the answers also just don't really amount to a whole lot, if that makes any sense. But I could gush about this game's music, especially when you go back to RPD and you're hearing that RE2 music again. I mean, honestly, there's so much to love about this game. I legitimately would consider it, and you can call it recency bias if you want to, I think that this is a top 3 Resident Evil game ever made. Now, is it perfect? No, this is Resident Evil after all, you know? With the exception of, like, 4, depending on who you ask, even the best Resident Evil game is not objectively, by regular metrics, like a great game that goes down in history. I don't care about that. I never have, okay? I love this franchise. I always have, and I always will. Therefore, I can admit that the storytelling has never been great. It's never been the best thing about these games. You play these games for the gameplay and for the characters, not for the plot. That being said, I do think that the overall plot of this game, not necessarily like the investigating the deaths of these people that survived the Raccoon City incident, I think that that part's cool, though it does raise questions about other characters who were in Raccoon City that night, especially when a certain character that was not in Resident Evil 2 pops up. So it makes you wonder, well, what about Jill? What about Chris? What about Claire? What about Rebecca? How far does this go? They don't really delve into that too much, which is kind of disappointing. But oh gosh, what was I saying? Like the greater mystery at large that starts to unravel the further you get into the story of the game, I think leaves a bit to be desired. I'm sure I just didn't find enough documents to read all of the right stuff about it, but it kind of still left me with more questions than answers. Maybe that's intentional. Maybe that's something that we're going to find out in Resident Evil 9 in, 3 or 4 years. Whatever. That's not my place to say. I just would have liked a little bit more substance that's a little easier to find. Because if it is there and I missed it, that's on me, sure, but like, I don't know. I don't want it to be like Doom Eternal where I have to read the entire fucking, you know what I mean? Just understand. But, yeah, I loved this game to no end, and I'm going to go back in and play it on Insanity difficulty, probably as soon as I'm done editing this video. If I were to give this game a number score, I mean, do you even need to ask? This game's like a 9. This game's an easy 9 out of 10. Go buy it right now. Don't wait for a sale. You are going to have all of the best moments completely spoiled for you. Just play the game. I know it's $70. I know that's a tough ask for a game that's not even 10 hours long. But these games are meant to be replayed. These games grade you on how quickly you play. And when you beat the game, it gives you charms and items and weapons and things that you can take into your next playthrough to make the game either easier or more difficult for yourself. It's meant to be played over and over and over again. You're going to get dozens, I mean dozens of hours of enjoyment out of Resident Evil 9, I promise you. No matter what kind of Resident Evil you like, if you've ever played and enjoyed a Resident Evil game, you owe it to yourself to play Requiem. Alright, I'm done. I'm gonna stop and get this video ready for you guys so that I can go back to playing the game. I'll see you later.